Alaskans, wherever you are, welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Welcome, everybody, to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. And boy, I hope today was the last day that I see snow on the Kenai Peninsula. It snowed maybe 2 inches, and I'm ready for that sun to come peeking through. I hope everybody's had a phenomenal week. If you listen, watch, or read Must Read Alaska and you want to help keep the lights on, just go to mustreadalaska.com. On the right-hand side, there's a little donate button. Every $5, $10, $100 helps keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska. If you want to sponsor the Must Read Alaska show, just email me, John, John, at mustreadalaska.com. We are creeping up on our 400th episode, which is very exciting. For that episode, I will make sure to have Suzanne Downing back on, and we'll kind of go back and forth about our favorite episodes. So that'll be a fun one. You won't want to miss out on that. But today we have a very special guest, Leigh Sloan. She has a new book coming out, which is very exciting. It's already out. She has a group called The Brave Nation that she helps lead. She has her own podcast. It's going to be very exciting to hear from her today. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show, Leigh.
Well, thank you so much, John, for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, this will be fun. So first, let's talk about your podcast. You have your own podcast. There's not a lot of people in Alaska that have their own podcasts. What got you kind of spurred on to start your podcast in the first place?
Well, actually, I'm a former pastor, and as you know, I don't know, the church as a whole, you can't always talk about the most controversial things within the pulpit, so to speak. So I thought, what were the things I was always getting in trouble for talking about, or what would I get in trouble for talking about when I'm in the pulpit? And I thought, I'm going to start something called Brave Conversations. That's what it was at the beginning. And then it turned into Brave Nation. But I am always a person who wants to say the thing that no one else wants to say, and really just Let's get it out there. Let's get it in the open and let's talk about it.
That's awesome. So we were talking a little bit beforehand. You have around 100 episodes, which is pretty phenomenal. What do you think your biggest thing that you've learned along the way from doing 100 episodes? That's a lot of episodes.
I mean, there's probably more than that. I didn't really know how many because it's been years now. But the things I've learned along the way, I think just having brave conversations with people, when you actually talk to people that think differently from you, it's actually not as scary as you think it's going to be. And people are actually, they can actually collaborate. We're actually made to do that once we talk to one another and we're not behind the keyboard doing keyboard wars. It's actually really, I've enjoyed every minute of it. And I've learned so much that I want to have more and more brave conversations. What's hard though, on a podcast especially, is getting the right people to the table that will be brave enough to have a conversation with you if they think differently from you. That's been my biggest challenge with Brave Conversations, is to actually get people on the podcast because they're kind of scared.
Yeah, we seem to have lost the art of being able to just have adult conversations. Maybe it's because people hide behind keyboards. Maybe it's because people get offended a lot. What do you think the reason is?
I mean, part of it is everybody is their own curator of content now. You know, everybody has a voice that can go around the world. And that's really not natural for us. I mean, we're meant to kind of have more localized conversations. So when we first started having these conversations, we had them privately, and it was a little bit easier to do. But if you think about it, everything you say is going to be blasted out 100 times. You know, it could be taken out of context. Anything you say and do can and will be used against you, right? So
Yeah.
it makes it just levels, it levels up what the stakes are in a conversation when it's just supposed to be us learning from one another, right?
So now you have this community called Brave Nation, where you speak at different events. You kind of have this inner circle. Talk to me about what this is. It's very fascinating. I think it's really cool that you've spearheaded this, and there's a group of you out there that are pushing for these kind of conversations.
Yeah, and like I said, it started out as Brave Conversations. We started on a private platform just on Facebook. And then it kind of grew into like, what's this movement going to look like? And it's really about I guess a new kind of tolerance. I know we don't really like the word tolerance, but it's a new kind of way of looking at how we do politics, how we engage with people. It's really respecting one another and valuing the dignity of another human being and just not being afraid. I mean, we come into it afraid, but we're brave in the midst of that. You know, bravery isn't the lack of fear, but it's pushing past that fear. And we are committing ourselves to coming to the table. So I'm happy to say last week this week actually, we just started we relaunched Brave Conversations locally. And so we started having more of those talks, and we did it on school choice, which was one of my passions as well.
Nice. So you've also ran for office a couple times. Do you think that's helped you kind of set yourself up to be in these conversations with folks, have hard conversations? And, oftentimes it's usually one side of the party that rules the roost. There's sometimes not a lot of conservatives in the mix in Anchorage. Has this been helpful as you've run for office?
I mean, I think running for office, it's kind of like it elevates a conversation to a different level. But I think if we can learn to have these grassroots conversations, our political conversations, and when we run for office, will be even better. Actually, I only ran one time for assembly. My husband ran, and then I helped run 2 campaigns. I managed 2 of Stephanie Taylor's campaigns. So, everything gets heightened, everything gets more toxic. I talk about toxic tribalism a lot in my book. And Stephanie and I really committed ourselves to not engage in toxic tribalism, which is hard to do, but we stuck with our guns. We had our faith behind us, and we decided like we're going to do it a different way. And I'm really proud of the way we ran those campaigns. So, it is a whole new way of thinking, but I think in the end, when we're playing the long game, we can win this way, and we can win for the long haul.
So if folks are interested in hearing more, do you have people, how does somebody sign up to become a part of this or come to an event or kind of get involved in one of these conversations?
Yeah, I have a couple groups on Facebook. One is Brave Nation and one is Brave Conversations. So you can look that up. But I also have a website called bravenation.online where you can find more about my book, about some of our events, and anything else that I do.
That's cool. Well, let's talk about your book because you just recently wrote a book. What spurred you on to write this book? My guess is you were having lots of these conversations with lots of different people, and it would have been nice to have a resource to maybe be able to hand off or direct somebody towards. What was your process like to write the book?
Well, I think that the culmination of my thoughts for this book was probably about a 10-year process of these are some of the principles I've been teaching people, but it came together. The book came together really fast. It was about 7 days that it took me to write the first draft of this book. And I will show it to you. Pride and Privilege, Expand Your Influence in Cultural Chaos. We are all in the midst of cultural chaos. And it's like, how do we orient ourselves in this world, right? And how do we talk to somebody who doesn't even believe in objective truth, right? That's like a huge leap to make. And so I get kind of deep in the book about some of the ideas that have been proliferating and why they've been proliferating, and even language and how we use our language. Is it going to move us forward, or is it going to move us backward in our communication with one another? There's just a lot of stuff in there. I even talk about our faith and the Christian faith in particular, and how that integrates with all this cultural stuff. So it's a deep dive, but I try to keep it filled with stories too, so that people can grasp hold of it.
That's pretty cool. So I think I read somewhere where you had a book launch, pretty successful book launch. How cool was that to have a bunch of people come out and support you in that way?
It was amazing. And I had some friends of mine read portions of the book, and people were in tears. Like, it's touching people. It's really gripping. And that was so exciting to see, because you write a book in secret. You don't know how it's going to affect people, but it's really resonating with people. And I hope that it just helps us have a better society as a whole, and really helps us, because it is a crazy mixed up world, and we are a little bit fearful for good reason, but this helps give us hope, and it helps show how we cultivate in our society. I talk about 3 gloves, for example. I talk about the white gloves, where, if we don't want to touch things in our culture, we wear white gloves, and that's not healthy, right? That people who don't want to get involved in politics at all, they think, oh, that's just yucky, I'm not going to do that. But then we also have the boxing gloves where we're constantly looking at everything as a fight. And I think there is a time for boxing gloves, but it's not every single day and every single moment, right? But what I'm advocating for is the gardening gloves where we actually get in there, we cultivate, we have a little dirt on our hands, but yet we're weeding things out and we're planting something new. So I'm hoping to do some good cultivating in our culture through this.
Nice. So where can somebody buy this on Amazon, your website? Tell me about where they can find it and get it.
Yeah, Amazon.com it's there. It's there for a discounted price there for now, depending on when you're watching this. And then also you can go to bravenation.online if you want a signed copy or something like that. So yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm going to be giving away a book. I'm going to buy one personally. And the first person to email me, John, JOHN at mustreadalaska.com, and put the book title in the description and say, I want a free book. The book title's Pride and Privilege. Say, I want a free book. The first person to do that's going to get a book signed. I'm going to buy it myself for them. So
Very
if
cool.
you're
Thank you.
listening to this, do this right now, because we usually do this and we'll get tons of people that will email me and it's just a fun thing to do. So
Yes.
I'm happy to do that.
And thank you so much. And I appreciate anyone who reads it to please leave a review. That would be great.
Yeah, give it a 5-star. So tell me about, you alluded to the fact that, or you talked about how you used to be a pastor. Tell me about how faith has played a role in what you do. How big a role does it play?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that all of our ideas are integrated. And I know we think about the separation of church and state. Everybody always brings that up, right? But that's not what the author intended, that we actually remove all of our faith thoughts from political conversations. It was really about protecting the church from the state and not the other way around. And so, we're not trying to establish a religion. We're not trying to strong arm anybody as believers, but our faith makes an impact in what we do. And in the book, I really break down what our world would be like without Christianity. There would be no concept of progress. And I go through some research and talk about how the Christian faith has really shaped our world in huge, huge ways. And if we stop letting it shape our world, it's not going to be a good outcome. So I think we really need to rethink, like, do I have these white gloves on for a reason? A lot of it's just a religious mindset that we get ourselves in because we separate faith from politics, and then we don't have any of those Christ-like qualities while we engage in politics, right? And then it's just a word I don't want to use, right? It's a big mess, right?
Yeah.
And
It's
so
a crapshoot.
exactly. I thought of that word too. So we want to, we want to redeem politics. We want to redeem this world. It's kind of like going to Hollywood. I grew up in Los Angeles, and people always decry, oh, Hollywood is, going to hell in a handbasket, right? But there are people in Hollywood that are actually affecting change. And I think the same can happen in the political realm, that the reason it's so bad is when we separate our faith from this realm. And so I think we need to rethink, how are we thinking about it in the way that Jesus would think about it? And Jesus did engage in politics a lot more than we think.
Yeah, and he was quick to make fun of folks that thought they were pretty cool. So
that's true.
Tell me a little bit about. So there's lots of folks. I hear from folks that have a lot of respect for you, people that look up to you and read your stuff and watch your stuff. So there's I think it's awesome that you're out there and you've created this resource, this new book. I want to encourage people to go buy a copy on Amazon or go buy a copy on the website. I'll put the link in the description. But who's somebody that you've looked up to over the years? There's lots of people that look up to you. Who's somebody that's kind of been a hero in your life, and why?
I'm not normally asked this question, but the person that popped into my mind first was actually Jordan Peterson, which is an interesting one. Maybe not my most ideal person, but I just admire his emphasis on, I think, the right conversations. I think he's talking about big thoughts that we all need to think about, and he is not afraid to stand up against people who are going to limit our freedom of speech, which is super, super important. It's the reason it's in the First Amendment, right? And so I admire the conversations that he's having, and I want to have a lot more like those. So that would be it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's some advice you'd give to particularly Christians, Jesus folks that are sitting on the sidelines, not getting involved in politics?
Yeah, I think, and I talk about this in the last chapter of my book. I speak more to Christians in the last couple chapters, but I think a lot of us really have this thing called false humility. And false humility keeps us from stepping up and getting in the game. I had it too. Even before I ran for office, I did not want to run for office. And I talk about some of my story in the book as well. But we act like, with our white gloves on, we act like we're somehow better because we're scared. And really, that's not humility at all. Sometimes it's humility to get up and to stand up and do our part. And I think the reason that evil can triumph is when good people sit back and they think that they're being humble. But really, we need to prepare ourselves for whatever that may look like, whether it's, digging trenches or rising up and running for office, whatever our role should be. We shouldn't really have any limits on it, and we should prepare ourselves for what's next, because in this season and time, anything can happen, and God could call anyone to anything. So just be ready, and you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know it all to say yes, and you just never know what you're capable of. When I said yes, I didn't know. I mean, I was scared. I didn't know what was going to come at me, but when I was in the arena, it was much less scary than it was anticipating it. So I would just say, be brave, move toward uh, more bravery, and get your gardening gloves on.
Nice. Well, and folks listening in, it's not always combative, meaning that, for an example, on the Anchorage just had a race, and there were 7 service board areas that didn't have anybody put their name in the hat. And that is some of the lowest hanging fruit that folks could get involved in. You put your name on the ballot. It's a real ballot. You serve on a service area board. That's really awesome. Great experience, something that benefits the community. And oftentimes those service board areas go with 0 people that throw their name in the hat. So folks looking just to kind of get in on the ground floor, that's such an easy thing to do, is throw your name in the hat for a service area board seat. I hate to see those go with nobody's name in the hat. So
right. When I first started, we had very little leadership in our party in our particular district. So all I did was look around and go, we are it. Let's form the leadership, and let's just do this. Because where there's a dearth of leadership, it's our duty to look and say, what's in me? What can I provide? And I think we've lost that sense of duty, and I think we need to resurrect it.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts. 20 minutes has gone by in a flash. Any last minute thoughts before we head off here? The floor is yours.
No, I just want to encourage you yet again to think, to actually look for wisdom and courage at the same time. It is possible. Sometimes wisdom is like, oh, you're not being wise if you're courageous and you do this thing. But I think we need to find that healthy balance between courage, doing what's right and sticking to your guns, and also wisdom. How do we do that? How do we do it well? How do we do it with grace? And don't lose your faith in the midst of all of it.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us. Leigh Sloan, folks, if you just caught the tail end of this, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to the whole thing. She has a brand new book out called Pride and Privilege. She has a podcast. She has a community called Brave Nation. I'm going to put all those links in the podcast description so folks can go check them out. If you listen, watch, and read Must Read Alaska, and you want to help keep the lights on, just go to mustreadalaska.com. On the right-hand side, there's a little donate button. Every $5, $10, $100 helps keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska. If you want to sponsor the show, email me, John, JOHN, at mustreadalaska.com. We are quickly coming up on our 400th episode, folks. We'll have Suzanne Downing and myself and maybe some other special guests on for that episode, reminiscing about our favorite episodes. That'll be a lot of fun. But until next time, I'm John Quick from somewhere in Alaska. Thanks so much for joining us.